Hello, and welcome back to Living a Culture of Life podcast by Human Life International. I'm your host, Colleen, and I'm so glad that you're here to join us today. Have you ever wondered how the abortion pill ever got FDA approval in the first place? Besides ending the life of a preborn child, which unfortunately the FDA didn't seem to care about, real-world data shows that the abortion pill comes with serious health risks for the mother as well. Well, earlier this year, Teresa Marsano came on our show to talk about what happens to the bodies of aborted babies after women take the abortion pill at home. After the episode was over, Teresa was sharing with me the independent investigation she's been doing into the FDA's approval of RU486, or mifepristone, which is the first drug in the abortion pill cocktail. What Teresa told me blew my mind. So on today's episode, Teresa joins us once again to share the results of her independent investigation with you. From my understanding, based on what Teresa has told me, it sounds like the FDA was under immense pressure to approve the abortion pill cocktail for use here in the United States, because abortion advocates both wanted to prepare for the fall of Roe v. Wade, and they also wanted to distribute the abortion pill for use overseas. So, it seems like the FDA didn't actually look at the health risks that the abortion pill would pose to women, and instead looked for which boxes they could check and how they could make the abortion pill regimen fit the approval boxes. This is a really interesting episode. Teresa has done so much investigation into this topic, and I found it really interesting. I do not know that much about how the FDA approves drugs, so I ask all the dumb questions for you on this episode. As always, before we get started, please pause right now if you're listening on our audio platforms and subscribe to the show. This is really helpful in helping us reach new audiences. And if you're listening on our YouTube channel, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for new episodes every Thursday. Without further ado, please welcome Teresa Marsano back to Living a Culture of Life. Welcome back to the podcast, Teresa.
Thanks for having me back. Glad I can come on and help answer some questions.
I'm so glad to have you with us. And so the first time you were on the show, you were talking about the independent research you did into what happens to the bodies of aborted babies after women have at-home abortions. It was a fascinating episode. Our audience really enjoyed it, and I will link it to anyone who wants to go back and watch it. Today, we're going to be talking about the FDA's approval of the abortion pill and how in your research on the babies and what that sparked, you also realized that there was problems with the FDA's original approval of RU486. And I think a good place to start for this conversation is talking about the recent Ethics and Public Policy Center study that came out, because that does a really good illustration of what the reality on the ground is like for women who take the abortion pill. So could you just tell our audience what that study revealed and how the findings of that study contradict what the RU486 manufacturer in the US says?
So, I'm reading it like anybody else is, and kind of shocked. I'm not shocked. I know a lot of people are, but basically their study found that the numbers that have been reported by the drug manufacturer of, let's say, mifepristone, which is Danco Laboratories, they've been reporting on their label. So this is the information they're giving the girls. Your chances of having serious adverse events are 0.5%, making the small number, when in fact, real world findings that this group found is that it's actually more like 11% of women who have taken these pills within 45 days, 11% pushing that, are having some sort of serious adverse event. That could be sepsis, that could be hemorrhaging, that could be blood transfusion, could be a hysterectomy, could be a DNC later. They took, and where did they get all this information? How come their information is different than the drug manufacturer? Well, their information is real world. It's coming from insurance claims. All right, so they got into what's called all insurance paid. So it's going to be private insurance, it's going to be Medicaid, anything that went in with a particular code, and the code would be had used mifepristone, and then this was a treatment for it. Okay. So, which is really interesting along those lines because um, the rebuttals that I've seen on this study are saying, well, they're not taking into account the cash pays or the ones we pay for, or the ones we see in our own clinic afterwards. Yeah, you bet if we added those in, we'd probably be up to 25%. That was the original failure rate of mifepristone, 25% had serious adverse events.
Wow. And
Yeah.
so the FDA just came out recently saying that they pledged to re-review mifepristone. And I believe so when they do that, what are they going to find? If they
Yeah.
look at it
So,
honestly, obviously. Because you use
well,
the example when we were chatting about it's like the IRS auditing itself. Like the FDA is looking at its own thing. So if they look at it honestly, if they really are trying to follow the science, look at the paperwork, and like come up with an honest re-review of this, what, according to your research, will they find?
well, so what they're going to find is that they were all square pegs trying to get into round holes. In other words, even in my own work, okay, investigation is how did they get that approved? It doesn't match any of the approval guidelines. And I even went back to 1996, some of them have changed. And when you apply for a drug, you have to answer particular questions, and that triggers then what kind of reviews they have. And none of them fit right. In other words, like, for example, location of use.
Mhm.
All right. And this is kind of really important when we start talking about this because there's locations of use where the drug's going to be used
Yeah.
by women in the United States.
That was the answer they put?
That was one of the answers. The question has four potential answers, and that is hospitals, clinics, physician's office, or patient's homes.
And they put by women in the United States.
They did. And then the second time they brought it through, it was women in the United States to be administered in a hospital, uh, clinic, doctor's office.
Not at home.
But remember, they were only talking about mifepristone. But the
Which,
entire protocol calls for the second drug, misoprostol.
okay.
And so it's a stiggly wiggly. Were they trying to get a square peg into a round hole? Or were they actually trying to create a liability loophole
Hmm.
by combining two products? One being still to this day, the second one is off label.
Are
Yet FDA requires it to be used in their regimen
for abortion.
for the chemical abortion.
So RU486 gets approved. The location is to be administered in a hospital, in a clinic, some official place.
Which it is. They were going in originally, they were,
Yeah,
right?
the second drug is officially approved for the stomach, not for an abortion. But the FDA requires that to be part of the abortion cocktail. So
And
nowhere does
unapproved.
it say that the abortion cocktail, any part of it, is being taken at home. Like that wasn't studied.
Correct.
Interesting.
All of the trials, all of um, they used two European trials and the US trial. They
Mm-hmm.
were all 4 hours in a clinic. After misoprostol,
The second drug.
their application, this is what I'm saying, it doesn't fit. It would have fit better in what's called a cross labeling, cross division. They're requiring that the woman takes a second drug that's off label.
But they're never approving. They're never like studying that drug in conjunction with the one that they're trying to give approval to.
Right. And Pfizer themselves, Cyril, Pfizer, they're all kind of this big family, um, wrote a letter saying, we're suggesting, we're not being a part of this. We don't want to be a part of abortion. Don't use our drug. Well, all that was a kind of a cover your liability because they were in all the meetings. So what I'm saying is when FDA looks at this, what they're going to find is 9,000 pages,
Mhm.
a lot of which are meetings, secret, not secret meetings, but you have meetings when you're trying to get a drug approved, right? But what I saw was this strong arming going on where FDA is saying, well, wait a minute. You can't, all of your rules here or safety guides are for the drug manufacturer, but not for the woman. Where's the
Mhm.
safety for the woman? So originally it was a 4-hour stay after the misoprostol, because that's the one who actually creates the abortion, right? The first one, mifepristone, it's kind of like I say, it's like a pre-treatment. The prostaglandin is the one that's actually the abortifacient.
That's the one that causes the contractions, which causes the woman to expel the child.
Exactly. That's why everybody's so confused. It's like mifepristone, misoprostol, um, in home, at the clinic. Where are they going to be? It was so unique. And the first of all, to kill a child, the first drug ever approved to kill a human being. And in the process, what does that do to the vessel of that human being? That's another human being, the mother. What is it doing to her, the harm that it's causing? It's
Mhm.
absolutely absurd. And I get a little riled up, and I apologize for that because it didn't fit any of the boxes.
Do you know if there's any other drug combinations that are like FDA approved that are similar situations where the first one was FDA approved for that specific thing and the second one is used off label? Like, is there any precedent for this?
So the off label's kind of stiggly wiggly
Okay.
because, and you'll hear them say all the time, off label, once a drug is brought to market for an intended use, safe and effective, doctors can use it any way they want.
Okay.
All right. Now, there's been some recent court cases where it was proven, which I'm going to help, I hope, try and prove, is that this stomach pill
Hmm.
was brought to the market with the intended use of becoming an abortion pill. The history on it goes way back. It's a prostaglandin. It's an abortifacient. They knew that. John Wilkie, I don't know if you know the name. He was with Life Issues way back. He was like the hero that went over to France when they were trying to get these drugs approved, saying, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Time out, time out! You can't use that second drug off label. Not okay. Off label can be used sometimes, like a cancer drug.
Hmm.
We were using ivermectin during COVID,
Hmm.
right? But what? It's an antiviral. So COVID was a virus. So it's an antiviral, right? But we're talking about using a gastrointestinal drug as an abortifacient without any adequate safety studies. Even Pfizer said, we're not going on the label with our name, which is really interesting as well. What will the FDA find? They surrendered the patent.
Yeah. And I want
So
to get
we're
to
so,
that. That's in my
oh
notes that I
no
have
no
from,
no
yeah.
no, I'm sorry, but misoprostol did.
Oh, not the
Right? So,
okay.
exactly. So side attack, so it wasn't side attack. It's called cover your liability, you know?
Hmm.
Anyway, let's get back to you.
Interesting. No,
I know, I
but
know.
I
It's
didn't
like,
realize that they also ceded the patent for the second drug. I knew
well,
that
I'm sorry.
Brazil.
It's not really ceding the patent. It's very different. It's the patent expires so that you can have a generic.
Oh, okay.
Even though they're still making the pill, it's considered a generic at that point. Very complicated.
Okay.
Let's go back. Let's get to you because there's reasons why.
Hmm.
the illusions and delusions and collusions, happened,
Yes.
right?
And that was actually going to be my next question because when we met before filming this podcast, you had said that there was two reasons that they were so like adamant about getting the abortion pill RU486, the first one, approved FDA approved in the US. And you were saying that according to your research, it was because A, they wanted to be able to distribute the abortion pill in the developing world in less developed countries, and B, because they were preparing for it. They knew that at some point Roe might fall, and they wanted to prepare for that by having an abortion drug available to be able to send to women in states with pro-life laws. And that is just so relevant to today's day and age because obviously here at HLI, we work with women in the developing world. And we've done previous podcast episodes on the Kissinger report and how the US government has an official policy to depopulate certain countries in the developing world. And then also, we're living in post Roe America, where women in pro life states are able to order the abortion pill through the mail and have abortions, even if there are like pro life laws. So I believe that you have the receipts for both those statements. Do you mind sharing those with our audience so we can
Yeah,
have more
so in
information?
in the deep dive, you want to go back and say, well, how in the heck did they do that?
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. I found a retirement interview for a woman who was leaving, uh, had left FDA. And so they were interviewing her years at FDA and was now working at Population Council, which is really typical. We've heard about the revolving doors of the reviewers, right? In FDA, in pharmacy, in pharmacia, and all that. Well, anyway, so I thought, okay, well, let's see what she has to say. And she's bragging, right? And she's saying it's a really revolutionary decade in the 90s. We knew RU 486 was going to be very important, especially in states where surgical abortions are not permitted. And if they ever overturn Roe v. Wade, it's going to be really important. This was in 1994. That's still part of her quote. So, what happened in 1994, right?
Mhm.
Well, back in the 80s, so Population Council's been in with this drug maker for a long time.
Mhm.
I think we're gonna talk about this, the patent
Yeah.
gift and all that. But this is in the 50s, it was a great history that they're asking, when did Population Council start? And
Mhm.
and she says, so I didn't know that eventually I'd come to work at the Population Council and was only indirectly involved with the council while I was at FDA. No collusion there, right?
So this is the same woman.
Same woman. And I can say her name is public record. Her name is Ruth Merkatz. And her husband was a OBGYN at Einstein Medical University. And if we ever wanted to do a special on what some of these universities are doing with these drugs, creating live harvesting, let's just leave that one dangling. Anyway, she's bragging about how Mary Pendergast and Donna Shalala. Mary Pendergast was deputy commissioner at the time under Kessler, their lawyer, and Donna Shalala was secretary of HHS. Now, this is brand new under Clinton. Day one, Clinton gets in, says, I assign the two of you to bring RU 486. They start negotiating with Population Council. So Mary and Donna came to Population Council and asked them to conduct the trials in RU 46 for the FDA. Can you imagine doing something like that today?
What's standard?
Well, standard is that the FDA can coach you on what they're going to be looking for, but this is basically FDA. This was basically for the Clinton administration,
Okay. So
basically for their political favor. What I'm looking for is some receipts on maybe some donations, because if we could make that connection, then that would be really valuable. So far, haven't found that yet. But the point is that FDA came to Population Council. Now that's the story she knows, right? Well, the Population Council had already been working with Roussel Ucloff, that was the creator of the drug, back in the 80s. They actually worked with them all the way back to 1969.
Okay.
Okay, so I mean, there's a long history there. So when we see things that come out, oh, yes, we got this gift and we're going to bring this drug.
Mm-hmm.
That's the political propaganda that we see, right?
So she was recognizing that preparing for the fall of Roe was important. Where did your I believe you had a quote too about wanting to spread the abortion pill to less developed countries. Do you have that
Yeah.
on hand?
So that comes to us from a 1994 congressional hearing where it was Population Council, FDA, a couple others that were there at Congress that were convincing Congress to remove the ban. George H.W. Bush had put a restriction ban on the drug to keep it out of the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Clinton lifted it. It's got to go through Congress. They have to get a wink and a nod before they can, bring the drug back in. And Clinton's request was to commercialize the drug in the United States. Okay. So here we go. We're in this meeting, and the one that I found the most unique is that the Population Council, Boynton was his name, he was a lawyer, is testimony to Congress. Population Council seeks to improve the well-being and reproductive health of current and future generations around the world, and to help achieve a humane, equitable, and sustainable balance between people and resources. Heard that one, right? So, our interest in mifepristone, now this Population Council, who's now going to be the sponsor, is twofold. Registration of mifepristone in the United States would be an important gateway to access around the world. Beginning in 1988, acceptability studies are already ongoing in China, Cuba, India, Vietnam. Bottom line, from the Council's point of view, it is hoped that when the FDA passes on mifepristone for use in the United States, it will turn out to be an important stepping stone toward the availability in lesser developed world.
I just want to put some pieces together for our audience here because when Teresa read me this quote when we were chatting about this before the podcast, my mind immediately went to the Kissinger report, which we have had episodes on. We wrote an ebook on it. I will put a link to the ebook in the description. And the ebook or the Kissinger report is the official US policy on depopulation. And basically, the US government wanted to obtain natural resources in, quote, less developed countries. That's what they're called in the Kissinger report. And they specifically named Population Council as one of the organizations that would carry this out because the government knew they couldn't do it directly. So just to kind of put those pieces together for our audience, the US government told Population Council to try to reduce the birth rates of less developed countries, including India, which was one of the ones you just named, Teresa. And then the Population Council comes back to Congress and says, hey, we need the FDA to approve the abortion pill so that we can distribute it in, quote, the less developed countries.
Exactly. So
So
what do we have? We have the FDA telling the Population Council, bring us the application and we'll get it through for you. Remember,
allegedly.
when you pass on it, not if we find it safe and effective. It's when you pass it, and then we'll be able to. This is the other thing, mind blowing. The woman who's running Population Council at that time, Beverly Winnicott, she ends up starting Genuity. Genuity is the distributor all over the world.
Weird. There's so many
It's
connections. I don't know how you keep them all straight.
And then Sakis is the director for the French drug, and he starts the European distribution.
Mhm.
Okay, because we're going to get to that because this is really, really important, seeding the patent. So let's
Mhm.
go to your next question.
So the next one was just basically, so the history was that, could you just give a brief history? Because I forget the name of the RU,
Mhm.
Roussel
Roussel Uclaf.
Uclaf was the one who developed it in France, and then they ceded the patent. Could you just explain like why that's important?
Okay, so Roussel Uclaf. They are French. There's a couple of inventors there, and they are part of what's called the World Health Organization Special Program. And they were a part of a group of scientists around the world, 11 different countries. They were all working together to bring a medical means to abortion for the lesser developed world. This is the thing. FDA holds such a high regard in the world. That's why they said if it gets approved there, we can use it anywhere, right? If they approve it there, where the woman doesn't stay in the clinic, then they feel free. Oh, it's safe and effective. We can go hand it out to women wherever they live. They don't even have to have a home.
Mhm.
Okay, so that was part of that. Well, seeding. So Roussel Uclaf, I'm going to say that the company had some good will in this. All right, they designed their scientists found this drug that would work, and they were trying to use it as a contraception. They were trying to keep it as a postcoital contraception, something maybe more like a miscarriage, maybe where the woman would take these drugs and slowly the baby would maybe never adhere and the baby would be 10 days old, something like
Which
that.
is still an abortion, but happens a lot,
Absolutely.
which happens a lot
Except
with
that,
hormonal birth control.
well, they knew that abortion was a trigger word, so
Mhm.
they developed the term contragestion.
Interesting.
So it basically the baby's conceived and fertilized and traveling, but she can't tuck into the womb because they've now made the womb an unacceptable place for it. So, but
Which
that was
is
kind
what
of the goal.
which is what hormonal contraception also does, which is why they changed the
It
definition of contraception
exactly.
or
I mean,
of
it's
conception.
all that melting pot, and this is some really big think tanks that do this, right?
Mhm.
But let's just kind of dial in because this is kind of a big piece on Rousseau Uclaf. They design the drug. They start using it in France. Yes, they're using it with a second pill. Actually, it's not a pill at the time, it's a shot. Very small shot because they realize they've got to get that baby out. It's not working in the early 10 days like they thought. It doesn't even work very well, but 75% of the time at 3, 4, 5 weeks. So they have to let the baby get more developed in order to increase the contractility of the nature of the prostaglandin. Again, RU486 is a pre-treatment for the prostaglandin. The prostaglandin isn't an assistant to the RU486. It's like which one came first, the chicken or the egg? That's how they got the pill approved. So what happens is in France, the drug maker can, because they hold the patent, controls how that drug is used. And they insisted that those women stay in a hospital. In France, they have hospitals just for abortion. The girls all check in on the weekend and then they all go home. All right. She was to stay there. And if she didn't abort in 4 hours, then they took the baby by section. All right. Now, what started happening is they started bringing in this pill. And Roussel Uclaf said, wait a minute, what is that? So basically, Roussel Uclaf had been watching the WHO's special program, which was a special task force on prostaglandin abortions. That
Mhm.
had been going on. The first one was 1969. All right.
Which
So
is that what the second pill does?
that's the second pill.
Okay.
It's a prostaglandin, and that's basically the abortifacient. They thought that they were going to be able to just go with that. But what happens is that the greater the therapy that they have to use as the woman progresses, the side effects were so great. The thing with adding the RU to it is they could use half of the prostaglandin, because the RU would increase the sensitivity to that prostaglandin doing the contractions, so the side effects were less.
Okay.
All right, so this guy that, okay, let me get his pronunciation. Beaulieu. In fact, he's the guy who just died the other day. You might have seen that. 98 years old. God have mercy on his soul. So he's the one who put them together, and he's working for Roussel Ucloff right now.
Mm-hmm.
And Roussel Ucloff is part of Hookst. Hookst is IG Farben. That goes back to Zyklon B days. And they go, wait. All of a sudden now they're being, blasted all over that they're now killing babies and that mommy's tomb is the gas chamber, right? So Pope John Paul II actually gets a hold of one of the directors at Hookst and says, you can't be killing babies. That company had bought this little company at the time.
Okay.
So this is what happened. They see that the population council's intent is to get this pill approved where the women don't stay in the hospital. They don't stay under medical supervision.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe in after just reading the letters back and forth, reading through the legalese versus a letter from the board of Roussel Ucloff. Given the very particular characteristics of the United States medical system, in comparison to that of the European countries, where mifepristone is currently being used, and considering equally the highly conflicted climate created around this product, the director deems that Roussel Ucloff would in no way implicate itself in the production or distribution of mifepristone in the United States. Now, that's the French translation from a friend of mine.
Okay.
Let me read you the English translation that got presented to the Congress. That Roussel Ucloff would be in no way implicated if it were to be involved in the distribution of the pill. So what we have is the US saying, oh, well, so the idea is that who's going to be responsible for the liability? Everybody knew the liability was going to happen. Everybody knew that there was going to be problems. Roussel Ucloff says, I'm not going to have anything to do with it.
So they cede the patent to Population Council?
But they ceded the patent. They didn't donate it him. I talk about it more like maybe Pontius Pilate. Like, this is the king. This is Jesus Christ. This is the king of the Jews. But you guys want to crucify him. I wash my hands.
So they recognize that it would be used for abortions and that women, like the mothers themselves, like obviously babies are unsafe, but women would also be unsafe. They didn't want anything to do with it, so they just let the patent go.
Well, they didn't just let the patent go. They what's called ceding. Ceding the patent means to relinquish it.
Okay.
Now, in the official documents, it says they assigned it. They said it's a gift. They said, oh, they donated it. We've heard lots and lots and lots of stories. But when you dig into the file and you actually read the conversations between the lawyers, what they're saying is when the French have a different language, and the French are saying, wait. We are not going to be involved with the way that you are going to be using this drug in the United States or around the world. We designed this drug so that women would be in a hospital, gently aborting, under the supervision of a doctor, not in her home somewhere or in a hotel or out somewhere in her hut. I mean, away from medical care. If she has, because they also knew the high rate of adverse events.
Mhm.
Their rate was almost 25%. So why is the abortion industry's numbers so different? They negotiated so FDA wants population council to bring this drug forward, right? So every single safety gate that FDA put up, population council said, no, we're not going to do it. So if you want us to get this drug, we're not going to do that. And that's what FDA is going to find is these back and forth meetings where the safety
Mhm.
FDA is saying she needs to stay in
Mhm.
observed. And so Russo Ukloff knew. I guess we could look at, do you remember Robert Malone during COVID? He was the doctor that actually designed mRNA. And he came out and he said, whoa, 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 whoa. You can't use mRNA for a vaccine around the world. It's intended for cancer, for single people, like one-on-one. And so, or Lejeune that
Mhm.
found, that he was trying to find in utero ways to find if a baby's a down baby, maybe they could alter the DNA, who knew? And then they end up using it
For
as a
abortion.
yeah, for a for
Prenatal diagnosis, and then 90% of those babies are aborted. And he was horrified that his discovery of like the three 21st chromosomes causing Down syndrome was being used for that.
yeah. And so I feel the same. I want to give them credit here because their letter from the board, not the propaganda, not the public letters we saw, but the true one said, we will not be a part of this. What you're planning to do to women by using the tablet,
Mhm.
we're not going to have anything to do with it. So they ceded it. They gave it
I
up.
understand what you're saying, but it does seem like they were still using it to kill babies. Like it was still developed to kill babies in the first place. So they still didn't have any regard for human life. They just
No,
had
no,
more
no.
regard for the women.
They had more regard for the women. They were still a part. They're still a part of the special program, which was to kill people.
Mhm.
And we always target the weakest. The
Mhm.
child in the womb is the easiest to kill. It's the easiest target, right? And if we kill them young, very young, then they don't use any resources. And if we lose a mom or two on the way, or she becomes sterile, all the better, you know? So I'm not giving him 100%. But what I am saying is that I suppose you could even say then, well, they didn't want the liability. Because in ceding the patent, in exchange, they wanted liability coverage they wanted Clinton to guarantee that he would protect them from liability, because you can go back to the drug maker, which I hope to one day, for liability.
Mm.
Does
Okay.
that make sense?
Yeah. No, that definitely makes
Because
sense.
it kind of fits in line with why would they give up a patent when there's billions and billions of dollars to be made? There
Yeah.
had to be a reason.
Yeah.
And maybe they were just protecting their other products from boycott.
Mhm.
Maybe they were covering their wallets for liability lawsuits.
Maybe their conscience pricked them at least a little bit, but yeah, you still are giving up the patent to someone who's going to use it to kill babies. So,
Yeah. And
yeah.
you're giving, oh, well, but this is the thing. They didn't want to. They
Oh,
were they were trying to withhold the patent and not have it go anywhere. And they actually stopped manufacturing the drug, and and I can't remember the term for it, but it's where it's actually like um, um, renege on the patent. In other words, so nobody could use it.
mhm.
But in France, the French government said, "Ah, no, 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 no. The women have it. They deserve to have this." And so they were forced to to keep using it. And then in the United States, they said, well, eminent domain, we could take the patent, right? Um, Again, so what did they do? Against our better judgment, meaning they didn't want the patent out, they wanted it gone. And so the only way that we can come up is for us to just give it up.
Okay. And then
And to
the
be done. And to
population
be done.
council, the patient population council is the ones that took the patent?
Well, they are, yeah, so yeah, oh, it was a gift to Population Council. The only problem with that story, the backstory, is that they had already been working with them since the 60s.
Mm.
Population and Rousseau Uclop go way back. There's just a whole conglomerate of them that were in the, abortion pill making
Yeah.
scheme of the World Health Organization. It was their special program
Mhm.
For medical means of killing children, killing
Mm.
children, killing children.
So then Clinton gets into office and wants to commercialize the drug in the United States. And then the FDA reaches out to Population Council and asks them to sponsor this drug. Is that correct?
Well, that's the story we've seen, but what I
Okay.
have found is that there's actually a longer history, and they already had the rights by contract to do all the United States distribution. So those are just a bunch of details that will come out in the wash. But basically, Clinton, you know, I just you wonder how some people can function and when they're so schizophrenic. But he, on one hand, in his campaign, is saying abortion be safe, legal, and rare. Yet on the other hand, he's telling them to get this pill out so that we can kill more babies, younger babies, more babies everywhere, not only here in the United States, but oh, we can work with USAID and NIH, and we can work with Population Council, and we can get it around the world because the World Health Organization.
Mm-hmm.
So the when it comes to these corporate conglomerates that their business model is killing,
Mm-hmm.
that's their goal from the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
It's there's nothing they won't do. It's just, can we prove that the malfeasance?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we can.
When we were talking about this beforehand, you were saying that basically there was like alleged sketchy things that happened behind the scene to get RU 486 approved by the FDA. Could you explain what your understanding of that is?
So the way I see it is it's a combination protocol because FDA actually on the labeling says it's part of a regimen. It's part
Okay.
of a red protocol. Okay, it's very rare that the FDA can't approve medical procedures, but they can approve combination drug protocols, regimen, where one's required with the other. This drug would have never gotten approved because of the low efficacy and the high and the low safety by itself.
Okay.
So they included the second drug on the label as a requirement that it had to be taken. And that's where to me, the
Questionable form
questionable
filling out.
answers was that they were letting the girls go home instead of staying for the 4 hours, which had been part of the protocol from the beginning through all French, through all the two French trials that they used as a comparison. That's what that court case went to the Supreme Court through with APLOG. You know, they approved the drug, but not on the trial basis. They just they call it arbitrary and capricious, which that waiver of that 4 hour stay is arbitrary. Where did that come from? Where's the study for that? None of the studies were done with the women. They may have been doing studies, but they weren't of record, right?
Okay.
Now, the other thing that's really important here is this. Originally, when they approved it, there were supposed to be physicians only that are able to surgically help the woman if she has one of these if the drug fails, right?
If the baby doesn't die or isn't fully expelled. In this
Exactly.
case.
So if the baby's stuck inside or whatnot. Now, remember I was talking about how the FDA said this is the way it would be safe for you to do, and population says, too bad, we're not going to do it.
Yes.
This has to do with the ER, right? So this is from one of their meetings, and this is the reviewer, FDA reviewer. We're actively reviewing the proposed labeling distribution system. Final comments and decisions are pending. However, there are several issues to be addressed. The proposed distribution system, as submitted, and this is where they're saying, oh, we'll only have certain physicians and that can administer the pill, hand it out.
Mhm.
Are submitted primarily addresses security for the manufacturer and the distributor, but it must also include safeguards for the patient.
Mm.
Patients must be assured that providers will be qualified physicians who are trained in surgical abortion procedures and currently providing that service. Providers must be available to manage any emergency complications such as hemorrhage, incomplete abortions, referral to a hospital emergency department by ambulance is not acceptable.
Okay. That's clearly not happening
That's
today.
clear. And it never did. See, there's some of these things that got kind of fudgy during that 2016 change, 2021, the COVID change, and those are kind of triggers. We call it incrementalization,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of like that off label. Hey, well, we'll get it approved for this, and then we'll, get the restrictions of distribution waived, and then we'll start using it because who says so? Who says standard of care for off label is acceptable? ACOG.
Mm.
They're the scientists. So if they say it's okay to use a stomach pill for an abortion, they're
Yeah.
the specialists. So they get to just start doing it because they all voted on it to do it, and it makes it okay without a safety study. Yeah, it's
And that's
shady.
the second drug, the stomach one, the
Yeah,
misoprostol.
yeah.
So
It's clear in my head. So thank you for keep asking because
I want to keep clarifying because they both start with M and I get them confused. So, and there's like 40 different names for each one of them. So I just want to make sure that our audience, first drug and second drug, they know which ones we're talking about.
well, and I'm always saying M&M, but to me that means morbidity and mortality. Because in 1993, when they were first designing the research for the workshops for these approvals and how to do the tests and all that stuff, one of
Mhm.
their specialists, one of their doctors said, "Well, it's kind of like the tail wagging the dog. There's a price for everything. Are we sure we want to? Are we sure we want to include the prostaglandins? Because after all the morbidity and mortality are connected with the prostaglandin,
Mhm.
not mifepristone. So in reality, Colleen, the REMS, the restriction of distribution, were on the wrong drug in the first place."
Interesting. So wait, going back to the point you had about the girls, like it needs to be administered by a professional who can also deal with like the quote unquote the side effects of taking the drug.
Right.
That never happened because they waived the requirement for girls who or women who are taking the drug to stay at the clinic for 4 hours after taking the first pill.
Well, the first pill was supposed to be 2 hours and make
Okay.
sure she doesn't have any just drug reaction. But the second one, 2 days later,
Oh,
time
she was
didn't come
supposed to
by.
go back to the hospital
She's
to
supposed
take.
to go back and she's supposed to stay there. That was the European model. That was the US trial model. And that was waived on the day of final approval. No public input. That's when he was a congressman, and he immediately the next day filed a Protection Act for the distribution. Didn't go anywhere, but he was a doctor, and he said, "Wait a minute, what happened?" Um,
It seems to me like part of the reason this is confusing and also part of the reason that like it doesn't seem to fit approval the way you think about it is because they were trying to get FDA approval for the first drug to be used in conjunction with a second drug, but the second drug was already technically approved. So they like checked the boxes for the first drug, answered all the questions as if they were only talking about the first drug, but then it
And
was
with
always
an
supposed to be
assume,
used for
yeah,
the second drug.
an assumed use. There was no discussion, and there was no discussion of, well, if 85% of the girls are going to abort in 4 hours in the clinic, what about the other 15%? There was no discussion on that. Where did they go? They come back in 3 weeks? They're talking about terminating a pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
They're never talking about what happens to the baby. It wasn't in any of the conversations because they don't acknowledge the child. And if they did, then the thing would. So we need to go back. And again, if the FDA is objective, then they're going to have to look at this.
Mm-hmm.
They have to look at the child
Mm-hmm.
that's being expelled, dead or alive. Some of them are being expelled alive. We talked about that last time. These drugs, neither one are feticidal. FDA can't approve a drug that will directly kill a human being. They don't have authority. So basically what they're doing is they're terminating the pregnancy. That's not an accurate intended use of the drug. Someone coached them to shave off the corners of that square and so that it would fit in that round hole.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I just see it as a big problem. I don't think with objectivity it would have ever been approved, if not the pressure from the top down from the World Health Organization and all the others that have big pharma. Big pharma
When
wanted to get into the abortion business. A lot of money.
when the FDA approves drug combinations like drug regimens, do they look at both of them side by side and kind of look at the regimen as a whole when they're going through this whole process? Is that standard?
Yeah, it was designed for the cancer, problems that were going on, HIV were going on, things like that. So yes, they can, but so there's a couple of things: combination approvals, cross division approvals, intended use approvals, things like that that just weren't properly done, in my opinion. Prove me wrong. Show me, Mr. FDA, that you looked independently at the prostaglandin, at the misoprostol.
The second drug.
Even Pfizer sent a Dear Doctor letter a month before approval saying, Dear Doctor, we had nothing to do with this, and this is not an approved use, and uteruses can rupture, and you shouldn't be using this. And it was to cover their liability, right? Well, if we take that a step further, when that drug was originally approved or applied for in 83, they had several studies back in Europe that it was being used and tested as an abortifacient, and it failed. It's unstable. There's no reversing agent for it. And even in the stomach study, it says to be used strictly only for high dose and SAD users, like you have arthritis and you're old and your stomach is weak, and so you might grow an ulcer. So if you take this pill too, then it'll stop the acid, kind of like Pepsid. They were approving Celebrex at the same time. Didn't really need this drug. But it's really interesting in the contraindications. Don't use it if you're taking NSAIDs at the same time, because it's been known to rupture soft tissue. So Cytotec shouldn't even be approved as a stomach pill. So
So it seems like to sum it up today, what you're kind of contesting is that the second drug was approved for use for like stomach issues, but it isn't safe for that. The first drug was approved by the FDA by only looking at it like on its own, but assuming its use in conjunction with the second drug. And so the FDA wasn't kind of looking at the full picture. It was only looking at one drug, but it also was approving it for use with a second drug. And the second drug has always been used off label, and that one's really dangerous for women.
Now you know why my hair is so gray. it's it the boxes they don't check. It's unapprovable. It's not normal. And there are some paths to take unique and extraordinary drugs through approval process. This is one, and it wasn't done
properly.
Yeah. I mean, prove me I'm wrong.
So if the FDA looks at it, then in theory, what they should realize is, but they're only looking at the first drug. So if they take an honest look at it, they'll realize that the approval process for that was looking at a combination drug, but the forms were only filled out for the first one. Is that basically what the FDA will find?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Pretty much.
And then
I mean,
if you look at the full picture, it's not approvable.
This is a quote from Coburn, the congressman. He
Okay.
says the FDA cannot escape the logical dilemma of having approved a drug that is either ineffective when used without misoprostol or unsafe when used with misoprostol.
And to be approved, it needs to be, quote, safe and effective.
Safe and effective.
Obviously, it's not safe because it kills a baby, but the FDA is only looking at the woman. Interesting.
Well, and really, one could argue that it is killing, and Lila Rose is working on this, and she's dialing this in, is that, the drug should have never been approved because it does terminate human life.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's not feticidal, but the action, and that's another box. That was the third one. What's the action of the drug? How does it work?
What did they say?
And it's the complete expulsion of the entire contents of a pregnant uterus.
And if they'd said it kills a preborn child and expels it from the uterus, the FDA wouldn't have been allowed to approve it.
Fine line. They'd find a loophole around it, but the intent, the purpose, the agenda was to get it through any loopholes, any Swiss cheese you could, to get it available for the World Health Organization, for USAID, for Genuity, for Exelgen, for aid access, for women on the web, for the whole plethora of them. And I'm sorry, but as an American woman, I'm offended deeply that they disregard my value in order to get to their agenda, that I'm their collateral damage. I'm the carnage that happens just because their goal is to kill more children. I think as a society, we can't have a culture of life when we're living with this going on every day, 3,000 times a day. That's just here. And now, this is the other thing. We're responsible. The United States, FDA, is responsible for every child that's killed in India or in South America. China's doing their own thing. They make their own drug. But the point is that, the American taxpayer should not be in the business of depopulating the rest of the world. It's an outrage.
Yeah.
And so when we desensitize, we eventually come to a point of indifference, and that's where they've done very, very well, is whittling away. Now we want to incrementalize back.
Do you think incrementalism would be effective in this case, or is that a good thing to do? Because you still don't want the babies killed or the women hurt from using this.
Right. And so that's what this whole study is about, and that their ask is to at least put it back. And that's what Bobby Kennedy said, well, at least the label should be changed.
Does
Well,
that
they just changed the label on COVID to say, oh, there's heart problems with it. Is that it? That's the way they get around it. But incrementalization to me, it's I plead the fifth. The fifth commandment says, thou shalt not kill. I don't care, thou shalt not kill a full-term baby. Thou shalt not kill a 15-week, 10-week, 6 weeks. I understand the process. I'd like to get behind it. And there are plenty of groups that are doing that. My goal is no more babies killed by these drugs or any process. But by getting these women at least back in the clinic where they have to face the child, not just flush it away, where the nurses have to face what they're doing, where everybody has to face what they're doing. It's not going to happen. That was the whole success of this drug, was to isolate the woman so that she's killing her child on her own. Out of sight, out of mind.
But if you get it back in the clinic, you will save a number of lives.
You will save. Yeah, it's going to be a fight that probably, we'll be battling pretty seriously, because it wouldn't be logical to have it in a clinic, but I mean, when the failure is worse than the alternative treatment, that's another reason it never fit with approval. That's why they had to use that subpart H. It was proving it because it was going to treat. It's an alternative treatment to surgical abortion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and again, it wasn't safer. It's 4 times more dangerous. So it doesn't fit that box either. But they shaved off the corners and squeezed it into the round hole. So it's yeah.
Well, Teresa, thank you for this conversation. There's been so much information and I've been trying to follow it, but I think it's important for our audience to kind of know the sketchy history of the abortion pill, because it helps to have that information when you're encountering people who don't understand what's going on with the abortion pill or why the FDA should re-review it. And it's just helpful to kind of have a context to place what's happening now, place that within.
Yeah, and my view is really different than some of the other studies that are going to be coming out, because I've been looking at it with a different lens. And so I appreciate having this conversation with you, because I think people also can understand, well, what's the big deal? So the numbers are off or whatnot. Well, it'll hopefully lead them to a place where they can say, this drug is not safe. It's not effective. Under the guidelines of the Federal Drug Administration for distribution in the United States.
Yeah. And I think the mind-blowing part for me of this conversation was just realizing that somebody actually said that they wanted to get it approved in the US to distribute in developed nations. Just finding more strings leading back to the Kissinger report, leading back to the US's depopulation policy.
Well, when I read your paper on the Kissinger, I'm going, oh wait, that's the abortion pill.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
It's the same actors, that special program,
Population Council. Yeah. So that was the point for me, that I was just that is something that is new information that I didn't realize was so directly tied. So yeah, I appreciate that. Well, thank you for this conversation, Teresa.
Okay, Colleen, God bless you. And, we're just going to keep, living a culture of life, and do what we can to do our part in our corner of the world to, protect these precious little, God's precious innocents. Yep.
Amen. And to all of our audience, thank you for listening. I am going to link the ebook to the ebook on the Kissinger report on the end screen. So if that part of the conversation really interested you, the US's depopulation policy, definitely check that out. We have a ton of great information on that ebook, and keep on living the culture of life. God bless.